Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Foresight Radio podcast, where we speak with industry leaders and innovators who are taking steps to make the senior living industry better. Our goal is to disrupt the industry and leave it better than we found it. Now on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Foresight Radio podcast. I am your host, Rachel Hill, here with Foresight, and I've got an amazing guest. At the time of recording, we are a week out from the holidays. I'm stressed. You're stressed. You know it. We're trying to hit all these deadlines before the end of the year, and we're all just doing our best. And I would wager to say we're all feeling a little burnt out right now. So this timing could not be better. I am joined by Kathy Parry. She has this amazing book. If you are watching us on video on our YouTube channel, it is right here. I've got it in my hands. I devoured it. It was such an easy read. It's called Senior Living Power. And really, it's about slowing down and re-energizing yourself. But I want to let Kathy tell us all about it. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. So, Kathy, help us. I'm stressed. I have my husband's birthday. I've got the holidays. I still have work things. Where do we start? Let's back up. And what was your reason for writing this book? Because it's incredible.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So I do a lot of my work is with senior living professionals. And when I would go out and either be training at their facility or at a conference, I would, same theme just came up over and over. We're burned out, worn out, maxed out, stressed out. This has been, the last few years have been crazy. So the work I've done, and we can talk more about that, but I've done a lot in how do you stay personally energized, professionally energized, or, organizationally energized, big picture. Yeah. So I wrote the book because I have kind of a theory on what it should look like. And we go all the way back to 9th grade science class and that circuit that we made when you had to hook up the wires and get the light bulb to light. So that's kind of the metaphor for this book is where are your energy drains? What's keeping you from flipping the switch on? How many light bulbs are you trying to power in a day? And then finally, the good stuff. What are your energy sources? What are those batteries that are going to get you back so that you can light up those light bulbs? So that's kind of what the book is about, meant to help at those 3 levels, organizationally, leadership, and then personally.
I love it. And I love that you segment that because I think there's such a hesitation to talk about this sort of division of your work self and your personal self. It's something that I think we're getting better at. And I feel like as LinkedIn sort of becomes this mesh of the 2 worlds, and while it is still very professional, we are beginning to learn more about our coworkers and people in the workforce. And I think that is why maybe, and I'd love to have you talk about this, why when you train people, they're so open and receptive to saying, I'm burnt out. I don't know if you agree.
I absolutely agree. I've seen it. And in the progression of my career, my training, we weren't allowed to talk about burned out because then maybe we weren't such a great employee. If somebody knew that we were burning out, but like I like to say, if someone gets burned out enough, they walk out. So as employers, we better be recognizing those signs because and being able to address that because we don't want just them walking out the door. And so this book it does have a little bent on keeping our best people by helping them realize how they can stay energized in the work and how they can also personally energize from it as well. So very important. And I like to say, I'm happy we're allowed to have the conversation now. It used to be we weren't allowed to have the conversation. And if I look at some of the good things that came out of the pandemic, one of them was we're allowed to talk about our mental health. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. I'm such an advocate for that. And just quickly, obviously in senior living, one of the biggest things that we see here besides occupancy is retention. I mean, right there, those are the top 2 things. So, I mean, if you are not familiar with the term quiet quitting, our company Foresight has been drilling that down this year and letting you know that this is a thing. Rebecca, who is on our team, wrote this incredible article about quiet quitting. And honestly, this I think is a great way to avoid that. So where do we start? How do we start having the conversation, identifying it, and letting our teams know that, hey, it's okay to kind of admit these things. It doesn't mean you're a bad person and a bad employee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to start kind of at the beginning that I talk about in the book, because it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
And it gets back to this circuit. And I always show this big visual when I'm teaching, and it's like about how many light bulbs are you powering? So it's just this person sitting away with trying to power like 10 light bulbs. And we can't light them all up. We don't have enough energy. We don't have enough organizational energy, leadership energy, or personal energy for everything. So I like to go to the beginning and say, identify your light bulbs for the day. What are the ones that absolutely you have to devote energy to? And what can you put on the dimmer switch? And something I've heard from so many people in senior living is it's the interruptions that drain me of energy. It's the interruptions throughout the day. And
tell me more about that. Like what kind of interruptions?
For instance, obviously we're always going to have interruptions for safety, or interruptions where resident care is very important, or all of a sudden there's a regulatory issue that is not being met. So where we think we might be getting all this work done and we're going to power this one light bulb all day long, we're going to power it. We're going to just work on our employee retention rates. We're going to just really dedicate some time to that. No, then all of a sudden we have all these other things. So I encourage people to take this look at, what are you actually trying to get done? Is it realistic? And prioritize so that you are not spread so thin, that your bulbs aren't all flickering at the same time. You really want to, and it takes a plan, it takes a plan. And some of us are great at that and thinking, okay, I'm going to put my hand up. And when someone comes to my door and they want to chit chat for, 20 minutes about their crisis, I'm going to need to find a way that I can ask them to schedule that later. So it is a people industry. It's a relationship industry. So we feel like we can't sometimes turn that off. But in order so that we don't become stressed out, burned out, worn out, we need to learn some ways to prioritize that energy. So I start there with, what are you trying to get done? What are the priorities? And dim some of those things that aren't priority.
I love that. And I love that it also really coincides with a big belief that I have, which are boundaries. And so this has taken so much work for me to implement in my own life. And it's not easy. I'm not going to sit here, and I know you're not preaching that either, that these things are easy, and you're going to have days where you can execute these things perfectly, but there's going to be probably more days that you're not. But I think boundaries are so huge. Like for instance, I let my husband know, hey, if I'm working, my phone is turned over, I will not be responding to text. And what's nice is then I know he knows. I don't have to respond to anything. It like eases my anxiety. And I also don't go down any kind of rabbit hole of going on social media or doing all these things, which talk about distractions.
Yes. So, and so if we leave the light bulb scenario for a second, then we go into a little bit more like, what are those ways to energize? I mean, what are those batteries? And you kind of touched on that one. And I get asked for this a lot. We talk about concentrated listening, and so often we aren't just multitasking. There's a term out there that is called constant attention deficit. So I think that's it. So very close. I'm getting it kind of close, but it just means our attention is always someplace else in more than one place. So one of the energy sources I say is use concentrated listening. When you are with someone, if it is not a good time, set that boundary and say, this is not a good time. I really want to hear you, but I need you to schedule it when I can really listen to you. So that way it's not diluted for anybody, but you'll say, most people can set aside 10, 15 minutes at the end of the day. So setting that boundary and saying, I really want to listen to you. I want to hear it, but not now. And that's an easy way to set that.
Oh, that's amazing, because I think with that scenario too, again, it's not that someone doesn't want to hear you. And I think that leads to such miscommunication and workplace tension and potential passive aggressiveness, all because just something got lost there. It's never about you. I feel like that's the thing, like flipping that. So I think that's incredible.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, we do want to listen, but we just don't have all the hours all the time. I tell this story about, my husband and I both work from home, kind of the same thing. We don't know if someone's on the phone or whatever. And I used to get the hand because he had his earbuds in, and I didn't know that he was even on a call, and I would just start talking. I get the hand, and the hand doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to anyone to throw up a hand and say, not now. But if at director level or at whatever level you might be listening and you're at, and you have a lot of interruptions in your day, I encourage you, set aside those times where people know they can come to you and you will listen. So whether that's 15 minutes at the end of the shift, or if it's, an hour, one afternoon of the week where they can schedule that time. And it helps then the people who are coming to you really think out what they're going to say a little bit more clearly. So it's not just an emotional, kind of interaction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to dive into the book a little bit here, because you are amazing. You sent this to me. I cannot thank you enough. And I started diving in. So I have a few notes here. I've highlighted it. I found my purple highlighter so that it would match. So if you guys can see that. But no, again, this is so fascinating to me, how you break things down, going back to the light bulb analogy here. So I want to read just this little part here, and I thought we could kind of dissect this section of it. So it says, when working with professionals in the senior living and caregiving space, I've realized there are different areas that can short circuit. And we were talking about this a little bit, but organizational, leadership, teams, and personal. So let's talk about how you came up with these categories. I think we started talking a little bit about sort of the leadership and teams kind of coming together there with setting those boundaries, but let's talk about where these categories came from, and let's address each one of those, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it's the model. It's the model that's out there in senior living. Big picture, owners, operators, they need to be looking at organizationally. And so say if one part of that circuit is off, which is communication, we'll just pick one, area that might be off, and they're not communicating goals down to the next level, which is management or the teams, or a director isn't getting communicated down to their team. There's so many places that it can short circuit, where an emotion or a feeling, or one of my batteries is contributing, where someone might feel like, oh, my contribution doesn't matter. Well, no, it actually does, but it might just not be getting communicated. So it's really, I came up with it because that's the model that generally most senior living organizations fall under. You got the big picture, and then you're breaking it all the way down to the aide, that takes Mrs. Jones to lunch every day. And anywhere along that continuum, it can short circuit. So you really have to be watching the whole thing.
Yeah, I love that breakdown and where that comes from. And also, you're not, in an interesting way here, you're not reinventing the wheel. And I mean that in the best way, because this is how you can sort of integrate this into a model that you're already familiar with, which I think creates this very low barrier to entry to start implementing a lot of the tactics that you talk about in the book. So I love the fact that you make it easy to digest, because as you said, I mean, talk about burnout, we're already all so busy. And when you talk about running a community or thinking that big picture, it can feel overwhelming. But I think when you can look at your book, is how I view it, as like this missing puzzle piece, like where it's like you're already working on the puzzle. If you're not going out and like getting the puzzle and starting from scratch.
Right. And honestly, where I found the disconnect in all the work that I do it's not at the organizational big picture level. We got big brains really wanting to build, great places for our elders to live, and they've got a vision. Yeah. Where I found a lot of the disconnect was sort of at the director level, because so many people had to fill in quickly. We have had a workforce issue. So you've got this amazing nurse who just, is the best caregiver, knows everything, but all of a sudden she's put into a director of nursing role. And there wasn't time for her to get some of these pieces for becoming a leader. And so we might have incivility on a team because she's still so concentrated on care of residents that she doesn't have time. So it, more than anything, I really wrote the book to help those emerging leaders in senior living, or someone that just has never had to lead a team, or that kind of thing. So yeah, I do believe there was sort of a missing link there that I saw.
That's incredible. I'm digesting everything you just said, because you hit on something that I've been stressing for so long, which is that there needs to be just more lessons in leadership. And I think that is how you create a great leader. I'm tired of hearing about managing, and we've got to flip the script on that. And I think there's a few things that you hit on that just aren't really taught, which is, again, making sure you're energized, communication, and I think really emotional intelligence is one of, I think, the biggest pieces missing in leadership currently overall, just that it's not taught, not that people don't have it, but that they're not in tune with it, because it feels like no one's talking about it.
Well, and it's a hard thing to teach. It really is. I just did a seminar for a group of director level, and they wanted the scripts for conflict resolution. That's a difficult topic, and they've been put in these roles suddenly where maybe they didn't have these different personalities on a team, and now they are charged with helping those personalities all work together. So they really needed those scripts on conflict resolution. Also, as far as contributing, so when you show up in that with that type of attitude or behavior, it affects our team this way, instead of don't show up that way, I never want to see it again. So just simple flip of the script to help that level communicate with their team in a way that makes their team understand, hey, we're all in this together, we want to work through it. And that constructive criticism, conflict resolution, that's a piece I get asked about all the time.
That's huge, because I feel like knowing how to have that conversation gives you a tool in your toolbox, because then you can have the conversation rather than, what do we all do? Avoidance. Oh, we're not gonna talk about that. And that doesn't solve anything. It's like when your family is coming over for the holidays, the perfect timing while we're recording, and you sweep it under the rug, right? You sweep all the dirt, you throw all your stuff in the closet instead of actually really clean it, I think is the perfect analogy. And Kathy, so we've been talking a lot about really these tools and what you're talking about in regard to leadership. I want to kind of pivot a little bit and talk about, so I'm a millennial, so take it or leave it for whatever that is worth, and dissecting that. So millennials and Gen Zs, I want to talk about your advice to start having these conversations. How do we approach, or how would you recommend approaching someone in a leadership role to express that we're feeling a little burnt out? We love our job, we don't want to go anywhere, we want to do it better though, and we're struggling, because that's scary when you have a lot of stereotypes that already we don't want to work, and all of these things. So where do we start with that?
Well, one of the things that I absolutely love about people who do work in senior living is they care. They care. And that's, you don't go into it unless you care about people. And I think, and we can talk about what I talk about, the care battery, and that's about personal care and taking care of yourself. And I have a long background in wellness and care and all that. But I think one of the easiest ways to have the conversation is start with the why. Let your manager know, I am in this because I care about the residents. I care about the people, but I can't do it at the level that it is expected of me if I don't take care of myself too. What can we do as an organization? What can we do on our food service team? What can we do on our whichever team you're on, maintenance team? What could we do to help each other stay energized? What are some of those things? So if you turn it to your leader and say, you want to be part of the solution. I've done some great work with teams who I call it the Power Up Initiative. All right, we're going to have a Power Up Initiative. So whether that's a weekly check-in, how you doing? How you feeling on a team? Or if it's okay, we're going to take that 10 minutes every morning and do a morning meditation together. We're going to check in. So there is a lot that I believe that anyone in senior living can do, no matter at what level. But if you go to a leader, I think they're really receptive. I'm getting the feeling that the people I'm working with are receptive to say, I want to keep caring, but I can't do it unless I care, we take a little bit care of us. So, and then people love having suggestions. So if you go to, your manager, your director and say, but I've got an idea, they are stretched. Don't have time to come up with this. If you take the initiative and say, I want to do a 15-minute, power up. I have a whole YouTube channel called Senior Living Power Up with 25 2 to 3 minute videos on how to stay energized. Say, hey, I want to play a video for the team, and maybe we could concentrate on this week. So there's a lot. I just want people to feel empowered to do that, to say, I'm important enough. I want this organization to take care of me. So there's not that quiet quitting. And I kind of sometimes think it's not a quiet quitting. It's somebody not being aware that it's happening. There could be some signs,
Oh my gosh, Kathy, I love that you are starting with the why, because I think that's the difficult part there is like, how do we even start that conversation? And I think the second part of that is addressing decision fatigue, because I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it's that leaders don't want to help, but you're putting out fires everywhere else. Right. So it's like, if someone can lay something out in front of you, that is a solution, that right there, I think, is a huge step in them taking in that direction to be able to help you empower yourself and your team to do that, because you're offering something right in front of them.
Right. There's a need. And when you start stepping up, you start contributing. I have this whole thing about that, people will leave if they do not feel their contribution matters. So how can you help people understand that their contribution matters? And maybe it just isn't in that typical role that they play every day, which is in a caregiving role or a supervisory role, whatever the role may be. But what if you let them contribute something different and say, this team could use a little bit of boost. Who could help? Who would contribute? Because we would really honor that if you could come up with some ways to energize our team. It doesn't have to just fall on the managerial level.
Absolutely. And oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we all know those people. We know those people who, like, you show up and you see them and they're energized and their energy flows and it flows over to you. And so use them, tap into that. I've noticed that you are always energized. Could you help with that on our team? Yeah.
That's all, because it goes back to like that saying, misery loves company, but it's the exact other way too, on the opposite end of the spectrum, when I think about right now, so my whole team, we work remotely, but it's almost, you can tell when we hop into those meetings, like when someone comes in, like, oh, okay, they're on point today, they're happy, or, oh man, whether it's personal or they're just a little bogged down with work stuff, like you can feed off of that energy immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah. So create a power up initiative, ask some people to join in. What do you think this team needs? How can we do it? How much time can we commit to it every week? Can we give it 15 minutes? Can we give it a half hour? And go with it. Start making a plan to energize. It's, just takes a little initiative, but anybody could go to a director level or next level up And I don't think that's going to be a plan. First of all, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost money to say, we want to be more energized. You're not going to, be putting in a ton. It's not going to take that much time. And, as we kind of touched on burnout at the beginning, and I'd love to circle back to that, people will welcome ways to not burn out. 79%, some studies show that 79% of people in senior living have admitted to burnout.
So let's talk about that. That's a staggering number. And that kind of leads into what I wanted to sort of, as we start to come up on time here, I wanted to spend a little time talking about your background in wellness, which I think goes perfectly with this concept of burnout. And I want to talk about this in respect to this misconception that self-care is a bath bomb. It's a face mask and essential oils. I'm just putting every millennial stereotype and meme out there. And yes, I do those things. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't, but I think what is missed with those things though is there is a mental health aspect to that though. And it is about slowing down, but that truly is not the definition of self-care. But I think we need to start talking about ways to take care of ourselves so that we do not get burned out. So let's kind of, I guess I want to address one, why you feel like burnout is happening, and two, that sort of misconception of what self-care really is.
Well, burnout's happening because we are expecting of ourselves, and we are expecting of our teams, no matter if it's at the organizational level, again, leadership teams, we're expecting more. I just got off a call yesterday with an organization. They're like, well, we expect X goal. They were like tripling a goal for the year. And it's like, wow. And he goes, but we're going to hire a couple more people. And it's like, okay, but still the expectation, do more, get more, be more, it's out there. And so we have to set those expectations for what is realistic and what's realistic for our physical health and our mental health. And again, this gets back to those, how many bulbs are you going to burn every day? And I do believe that, I think it's organizational. I've seen some organizations that just do it beautifully. It's like, no, we understand our people need that. But then there's some that just really are, like kind of hair on fire. We got to do this. We got to get it done. So an assessment is really key at any level. Where's my energy going every day? Do I have enough? Where is the burnout coming in? Because it could really just be a physical burnout personally. Like, I am physically burned out. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm stressed. I'm not eating well. That's one type of burnout. And then of course there is the mental burnout where I just don't think I can care for, anymore. I'm giving myself all, or, it could be, a team issue, a family issue. So assessment is first. I can speak very firsthand from this, and I'm very candid about it in the book. I cared for a special needs daughter for 20 years. I was her caregiver. She was expected to live 2 years and she lived 20. And so just having a home health aide in the house all the time and making her special foods and, those types of things, it's draining. And whether it's a family member or your residents in your community, that type of care, again, because people who are in senior living do it because they care about people, that can create a heavy heart. That can create a lot of mental health issues that you could struggle with. So the assessment is key. Where are you feeling it? What is going on? And there's a great tool that you can use. Like, does it bother you most days, especially if it's a mental health issue? Is this something that makes you, sad, teary, angry? Is that emotion coming in? And then, if you've tried some other things like your bath bombs or, going for a walk and you're still feeling it, then maybe it's time to talk to a mental health professional. And I know you've been candid on this show about doing that. I certainly have done it, with my daughter, and then I went through a divorce, and, there's a lot. I like to say there's a lot that your mama, your best friend, your glass of wine cannot handle. So get some professional help if you're feeling that way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing. First of all, that's so special, and I think something that our audience really needs to hear, and something I'm pushing, our organization forward in is having this discussion. It's It's so important. I think our again, going back to what I said about avoidance, I think we can have a tendency to avoid those things and almost escape in our work, which then I think increases burnout. And it's I think when we can stop hiding behind things, and again, I'm not like trying to basically condone people or say, oh no, you can't have that glass of wine. No, relax.
No,
But
no, I'm not saying that. No.
exactly. Yes. It is the holidays. I'm very ready. But also saying though that like those are not the things that we can hide behind. And I think it's so critical to address things head on and have these conversations. Anyone that has listened to the podcast, and I don't know if I've specifically shared this, but I lost both my parents within 3 years of each other. And I mean, being in my 20s and having something like that happen, it rocks your world. And as I can imagine, with the level of care that you had to provide, and getting that news just from the start had to be very jarring. So I do think it's important to do that assessment, like you said. I think it's always, what I love is that you're giving baby steps. If we're going to power up 15 minutes, if something feels off, okay, you don't have to solve that problem yet. Just what is the problem?
Right. You got to start with what is. And I do want to I think personally, we are getting better at identifying it in ourselves. I will say, from what I've seen, I think there's a bit of disconnect at the organizational level, because some of the organizations I've worked with, when this comes up, they're, oh yeah, well, somebody can have, 3 calls with a counselor, and we've built that into our healthcare, blah, blah. But then they don't provide the time for people to do that. Or what I've heard, it's like, well, yeah, but I can't schedule that because, there's only certain hours, I can't get off. So it needs to be looked at as a little bit bigger picture, not just that we're going to give you, part of your healthcare plan is that you can have 3 sessions with a counselor. That's okay. But it's also saying it's okay to have those 3 sessions. When can we set aside some time and really doing that assessment? Am I okay? I like to have those, each team should be doing, where do you feel? And it could be anonymous. You could do it. And if you're coming back that, over 50% of your staff is feeling, burned out or stressed out, or saying that, it's time as an organization to put a little bit more into that, because you really, we've seen how mental health can spiral out of control, and it can do damage, not just to the individual, can do damage to, the residents, the community. So we have to, it's getting to the point we have to really say, this is a real thing. We want to make sure that our people are okay.
100%. And you make such a beautiful point. It's a we're a person-centered industry, and I use my air quotes, and I hate doing that because I sometimes do feel like that is overlooked because of, again, all these other fires that on the organizational level that need to be put out. And I hate to break it down this way, because to me it is always the people first, the residents and the staff. But if you want to break it down in the numbers, it's billions with a B, folks, yes. Billions of dollars that your organization loses in call-offs, no-shows, and eventually your staff just not coming back. So you're not retaining staff. So if you want to look at it, unfortunately, from that economic standpoint, if that's where your goals have to be, in order to get you to focus on that, well, I'm throwing that out there because the numbers are staggering.
Yeah. So and again, what I love about this is these aren't the big things that take a lot of time and investment. I worked with, just recently, I'm working with an organization, and someone said, I wanted to stay on and make sure I hit all the shifts. This person was in leadership, and she saw a new person, and she hadn't met this person. She said, well, tell me what you like about working here. And she goes, people ask me how I'm doing, and they ask me if I'm having a good day. She goes, that didn't happen at my last organization. That costs nothing. But if we care for each other, even at that level, and I talked to a CNA who said, he started in an organization and no one asked him anything about himself. No one took the time to say, why did you get into this? Or what are you doing? And he just felt like he was part of a cog in the machine of trying to care for people who were very important. And those are small steps that at an organizational level, we initiate not just a power up initiative, but a kindness initiative. What does that look like? How do we care for each other, as a team? So yeah, little things.
That's really, really beautiful. And like you said, costs nothing. Budgets are tight. It's stressful. I'm certainly not going to gloss over that we just had a global pandemic, and the effects of that will continue to be felt. So I clearly understand that. And I love that you bring up that point. It costs nothing. Kathy, as we come up with, I could talk to you for forever about this topic. It is so near and dear to my heart, but you are such a wonderful resource. So I want to make sure before we wrap up here that, you can share where people can find out more about you and the work you're doing, and connect and have you talk with their teams if they'd like to, and where they can get your book, because it's incredible. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, the book's available on Amazon, Senior Living Power, Energize and Serve with Joy. And my website is Kathy with a K, Parry with an A. Don't put in Parry with an E, because you get Katy Perry, and she's not going to help you.
Great pop singer, not you though.
Right. KathyParry.com. And I also have that YouTube channel called Senior Living Power. So there's some great tips on there.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Rachel. It was wonderful to be with you. And thank you to all of the caregivers and senior living professionals. You make life special for a lot of people.
Thanks for listening to Foresight Radio. You can go ahead and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. That's Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and of course, you can listen directly on our website. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining the conversation. We'll talk to you soon.